locked in fear. The scent of rust and stale air lingered in the tiny storage room where Ava sat trembling. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, her hands clammy as she traced the scratches etched into the wooden floor. Each mark felt like a scream frozen in time, a story of desperation and violence. She didn't remember how she'd ended up here, not entirely. Flashes of last night's terror came in jagged pieces, disjointed like shards of broken glass, a shadow looming over her, the sharp tang of blood, a scream cut short. Her mind wandered back to the dinner party, the last time she'd felt any semblance of safety. It had been an intimate gathering at her boss, Richard's sprawling estate. Candlelight flickered over polished furniture, laughter weaving through the air like a warm melody. But even then, Ava had felt the weight of someone's gaze lingering too long, burning into her skin. Was it Clara, the colleague with the venom-laced compliments, or Greg, whose quiet intensity always unnerved her? The sound of distant footsteps jolted Ava back to the present. She froze, her eyes darting to the locked door. Whoever had trapped her here could still be out there, could still be waiting. Her fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. A key. She didn't remember finding it, but clutched it like a lifeline. Slowly, she turned it over, noticing the faint smudge of blood on its surface. Whose blood? The question sent a shiver down her spine. Ava's fractured memories began to stitch together, albeit painfully. She remembered following Richard into the study after dinner. He'd looked tense, his usual charm replaced with something darker. Then the argument, his accusations about missing money, his fury when she denied any involvement, the knife on his desk, glinting under the lamplight. "It wasn't me," Ava whispered to the shadows, as if pleading her case to a phantom jury. But the shadows didn't respond. Another fragment surfaced, Clara entering the study, her voice sharp and urgent. "Richard, this has gone too far. Let her go." Then chaos, a struggle, the knife. Ava's stomach churned. She had seen the blood, too much of it. Clara had fallen, her lifeless eyes wide with shock. And Richard had whispered something to her before shoving her into this room. What had he said? The memory was a blur, but one word clawed its way back. Witness. The footsteps outside grew louder, snapping Ava into action. She fumbled with the key, her hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to fit it into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a dim corridor, and then she saw him. Richard stood at the end of the hallway, his face an unreadable mask. In his hand he held the knife, its blade catching the faint light. "You weren't supposed to remember," he said, his voice chillingly calm, "but now we'll have to fix that." Ava backed away, her mind racing. The storage room had been a prison, but at least it had been a barrier between her and him. Now, with the door open, escape felt both tantalizingly close and impossibly far. In a final, desperate surge of fragmented clarity, Ava recalled Clara's last words. "There's a way out, the cellar." She spun on her heel, running toward the faint scent of earth and mildew. Behind her, Richard's footsteps pounded in pursuit. The corridor twisted and turned, each shadow playing tricks on her mind. Finally, she found the cellar door, its hinges groaning as she forced it open. She descended into the dark, her heart hammering like a trapped bird. The cellar was a maze of crates and barrels. She ducked behind one, pressing her back against the cold stone wall. Richard's footsteps echoed above, then descended the stairs. "You can't hide forever, Ava," he called, his voice slicing through the silence. Her breath hitched as she spotted a heavy iron wrench on the floor. Gripping it tightly, she waited. The hunter became the hunted. When Richard's shadow loomed close, she swung with all her might. The sickening thud reverberated through the cellar as he crumpled to the ground. For a moment, there was only silence. Ava dropped the wrench and stumbled out into the cold night, the fresh air filling her lungs like a lifeline. She didn't stop running until she reached the estate gates, her fragmented memories now a haunting mosaic she would never escape. The police arrived hours later, finding Richard unconscious in the cellar and Clara's body in the study. Ava watched from a distance, wrapped in a borrowed blanket. She had survived, but the scars of that night would linger forever. In the days that followed, as she pieced together the full truth, one question remained unanswered. Who had truly been the villain? Richard, with his greed and rage? Clara, who had hidden secrets of her own? Or Ava, whose hands would never feel clean again? The scratches on the wooden floor replayed in her mind. Stories of desperation, stories of violence, stories she could no longer unhear.